Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we are going to talk to our audience today about healing a space in your heart. And if you have a broken heart from a loss, you are going to love this show because this man has been incredible in helping people heal those holes in their heart and find hope again. So, Heidi, you want to introduce our guest?
Sure, I'd love to, Mom. So our guest today is Larry Carlat. Larry is a grief coach and group leader for bereaved parents at Our House Grief Support Center in Los Angeles, and he is the author of A Space in the Heart, a survival guide for grieving parents. Larry has written for the New York Times, Men's Health, Rolling Stone, and many others. Welcome to our podcast, Larry.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It's wonderful having you on. I know the name of your book, A Space in the Heart, came from your son when he was a young kid, right? Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about Rob?
Yeah. So we adopted Robbie at birth, and he was a difficult baby, and he was a difficult teenager, and he was a troubled adult, and he wreaked havoc on us like I can't even imagine anyone else. And yet I've never loved anyone the way I loved Rob. When Rob was 3 or 4, he said, I have a space in my heart that never closes. And we always thought that that was about him being adopted. And I think it was, but we also found out later in life that Rob had bipolar disorder, Rob was a depressive, Rob was an alcoholic. And as I said, loved him more than I've ever loved anyone, and mainly because he needed it more than I think anyone I've ever known.
Mhm. And so at 25, Rob took his own life, correctly?
At 28, yeah,
28.
yeah. He shot himself, and what I like to say is it was a shock, but it wasn't a surprise. He had been suicidal in the past. He had reached out a number of times in the past, and this time he did not reach out. I had lunch with him the day before he killed himself, and I did not have any indication that he was thinking about this. But he had threatened it many times in his life.
You know, Larry, I love how candid you're being because
Mhm.
I feel that it really connects to a lot of people's stories and they don't talk about it like this openly.
Yeah,
Sometimes they hide this. And I think it's really important to normalize, hey, he struggled. You know, he
yeah,
struggled in his life. And I mean, some people struggle. And like you said, you were kind of worried, it sounds like, throughout his life that this may happen at some point.
yeah. Another thing that we don't talk about along with that is that when Rob died, there was a relief, and
Mhm.
not a relief from, oh my God, I'll never see him, but just the relief of the panic that parents of complicated children live their whole life with. And anytime the phone rang in the past,
Mhm.
I'd get a minor heart attack when I knew that Rob was calling, because it was never with good news. And after he was gone, there was a palpable relief in that, I don't have to worry about the phone ever ringing again.
I was interested in your book, which is a wonderful book, where you talked about your first step forward. That was pretty early and it was pretty intense.
It was a year in or something, but it was something that I had always known, but it just hit me from another angle. And it was, Rob was mentally ill.
Right.
And uh and we knew that, and yet we didn't know it, in that I think we put our heads in the sand, even though he was diagnosed when he was 17. Rob never accepted it. And for the most part, we didn't see it, but then we would see it when he would go off the rails. Accepting the fact that Rob was mentally ill just took all the guilt, and I never felt any shame about it, but I would beat myself up that I should have done this, I should have done that. But Rob was mentally ill, and the mental illness got what it wanted at the end. And no matter how hard I tried, and I also write in the book how love isn't enough to save the person you love, particularly when that person doesn't want to be saved. And that's what happened at the end. Rob did not want to be saved. And we tried, Rob went to any number of doctors and was on meds, but never really took the meds. And he never really acknowledged his mental illness. He did finally acknowledge that he was an alcoholic when I took him to his first sober house. And that was something that I had never heard come out of his lips before. So him acknowledging that he was an alcoholic. And it wasn't until 2 days before he took his own life that he reached out to my ex-wife and said that he wanted to get some meds. And obviously he was in a bad way at that time. Yeah, I mean, it was something that is so obvious, and yet we just chose to not look at it, and for lots of different reasons.
Well, Larry, you're making a good point, because you can't love somebody to wellness.
Mhm.
Like, you can love him as much as you did, and that's all, at the end of the day, you can't, that doesn't mean that they're gonna get better, et cetera, or accept help or whatever. Love's not enough sometimes.
Love is not enough. But the most important thing for me was staying connected to Rob. Rob took his own life 6.5 years ago. And right from the start, the way I felt I needed to be connected to Rob was by writing, because I've been a writer, ever since I was a little boy. And that was the way I grieved. I was able to, I wrote every day for a year on a blog about Rob. I did not miss a day ever. And it was a way for me to stay connected to him, and it was a way for me to ventilate, and it was a way for me to process and document my loss. And it was also a way, uh, I had a number of people who followed the blog, and I needed a witness. So that was sort of the beginning of, I think, my healing process.
You had a witness. I think that
Mhm.
is really important. I think that's a lot what peer support group does. We have people who witness and are willing to sit with us.
Yeah, I agree. I think the interesting thing is I didn't know that's what I needed. It was a very intuitive type of thing. It wasn't until I had been doing this for, whatever, 6 months, that I realized, oh, there are people here that are supporting me. And there are people here who are looking forward to what I'm going to say the next day. And of course, it was fundamental in my healing. So that was really sort of the first thing. The second thing is, I joined a grief group, and I think that is also, it's the first thing I recommend to people when I'm speaking to bereaved parents, is, if you can, join a grief group, because you're with your people. And the connections that you make to other bereaved parents are so intense and so intimate. And I was in a grief group for 2 years, and these people have become my lifelong friends. And the thing we have in common is the trauma of losing a child. But sitting with a group of people who understood everything I was going through, who understood everything I was feeling, and also being a witness again, was also just, it was a transformative thing, and I can't recommend that more highly.
Now, a lot of the grief support groups I see are mainly women. How do you get the guys in?
So difficult, and I see the same thing, and I've done groups for the last 3.5 years for bereaved parents, and it's all women, and it's one guy usually who's there reluctantly because his wife made him go, and he doesn't share, and when he shares in, in monosyllables, and he doesn't want to be there. Guys don't like to open up in front of strangers. I'm doing two online grief groups because now that I've moved to upstate New York, uh, I just decided to do my own groups, and I'm doing two, and one is with bereaved moms, and the other is with bereaved dads. And I feel guys will open up to other guys, particularly other guys who have experienced the same thing. But I think being vulnerable in front of women is still it's difficult for a lot of guys, and they feel more comfortable with other guys. So I'm glad I can help them because I feel for the most part guys also don't seek help. They feel like they can take the pain and they'll swallow it, and yet, boy, they have deep, deep feelings, no surprise. And they're also able to articulate those feelings, but they need a little help. Sometimes they don't have the language to really express how they're feeling. And I can't tell you how many times people have told me, when they read the book, particularly men that read the book, they say, this is exactly the way I felt, and I've never been able to say it.
Mhm. Now, you went to therapy. Heidi and I were talking about it. You did, I was reading the book, some EMDR,
Hmm.
eye movement therapy. And you,
Yes.
it didn't help you a lot, or it did? Or,
I don't know, to be honest. Like I did it at the beginning. I felt like it was like almost a practical joke, and I felt silly doing it. But I did it for off and on for about a year,
wow.
and yeah, and well, I stayed in therapy for also that first year. So that was another thing that helped me immensely was going to a great grief specialist. And a lot of people I speak with, they go, because I always tell them find a great grief specialist, and they go, I feel uncomfortable going to someone who hasn't had the experience. And frankly, I don't think a great grief therapist needs to be a bereaved parent. They need to be a great grief specialist. And mine was, and she did not lose a child, but she was fantastic. And the EMDR stuff, did it rewire my brain? I don't know. However, was it that? Was it all the talk therapy that we did? Was it me writing? I think it was a combo platter of all those things that led me to find, I don't want to say acceptance, but it led me to sort of a kind of peace about Rob not being here. And I'm going to rant for a second, but a few of the other things I did were a little more out of the box. I went to multiple psychic mediums and had some incredible readings. And I know that I was speaking to Rob. I've also done many, many psilocybin journeys where I saw Rob's spirit. And, was that the medicine? Was it my imagination? And my answer to that is I don't care what it was. I chose to believe that I saw Rob's spirit and he was speaking with me, and that provided immense, immense comfort. I did a grief group for 2 years. I did psychic readings throughout those 2 years with different psychic mediums. But then I also, in terms of doing psychedelics, I was already maybe 3.5 years out before I tried that. And that's what I suggest to other bereaved parents because they read, I wrote a story for Esquire and it's in my book about my psychedelic journeys. And when people read that, they think, oh my God, I have to do it because look at this experience. I'm going to meet my son or my daughter. But I tell people before they want to do magic mushrooms, I say, you should be at least 3 years out before you even think about something like this. And I also warned them that my experience was my experience and their experience will be way different. So I tried to sort of manage their expectations, because when I did it, and it was the second time I did it, I hit the psychedelic jackpot where I saw Rob's spirit and I had an ego dissolution and I quote unquote died, and I saw my parents' spirit, and it was just
Mhm.
this amazing, amazing trip. Uh, and when people read about that, they go, "Wow, I want that." And I said, "You might not get it." So I do warn people, but I do think it's beneficial to anyone who has suffered any sort of trauma. And I've done it a number of times, and I've done it solo and in groups. And just to hear people talk about their experience from other traumatic experiences and how much it's helped them heal. So I think it's an out of the box thing. And I think people are generally fearful of it. And I always tell them that if you're not scared, there's something wrong with you. You should be scared.
Yeah,
But facing that fear and letting go is one of the most liberating feelings they'll ever have in their life. But it takes a lot of guts and courage to let go and to face
So
it. And
Larry, what I'm hearing is that you've done a lot of different things.
I have.
You've tried, I love all the things you've tried. You've done things in groups, you've done things individually, you've done EMDR, you've done, magic mushrooms. I mean, you've peer support, it goes on and on and on. It's psychics, it's wonderful. And and,
Well,
and it sounds like gotten something out of a lot of it.
100%. And what I say is that when Rob died, he cracked me open. And I have been open ever since. And I wasn't an open person in the past. I was really very closed down. I used to go to therapy, and I would say to my therapist, all I want to do, I walk around and I feel like a tight fist. And all I want to do is I want to be able to just open up my fingers. And that's the way I walked around. And when Rob died, like I said, he cracked me open. And it's one of the gifts that he gave me. I'm still very
Mhm.
much open. And I also try to tell other bereaved parents, if they can, to be open to anything that's going to provide comfort and then healing as well. So yeah, I so the final piece of healing my heart was I fell in love with my now wife. We got married in March, and 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 she has healed my heart. She's almost the final piece of the puzzle. And when I hear people talk about how they'll never be the same, and particularly when you're newly bereaved, where you're in the dark and you're feeling it's the worst pain you've ever been through. And I try to tell them, and I'm always talking about hope. I mean, when I wrote the book, I was very cognizant of getting hope in almost on every page, even when I was talking about very raw, painful things. I tried to weave hope in there, and I know so many bereaved parents now, because I've been doing this for some time, where they find joy again, and then they find meaning, and and I think finding meaning for me has become, being a group leader for bereaved parents, and also just grief coaching. And I feel, my heart has been healed, and I'm grateful for that.
I love it. I want to quote something that you said. You go from ordinary to extraordinary after a significant loss.
Mm, yeah.
Larry has lost a child. I've lost a child. I've lost a spouse. And I will have to say that everything he says fits into spouse loss, child loss, whatever kind of loss,
Sibling loss.
what sibling loss. Yes, Heidi always reminds us the bereaved sibling, and we didn't
Yeah.
kind of neglected your son. You could benefit from his book with any kind of a loss because there's such a hope in it. So go
Yeah.
ahead and read that.
A little reminder, but
Okay.
it You'll see why I picked it. Here's a little reminder of an important thing that often gets lost in the grief sauce. It's simply this: there is always hope. It's hard to see sometimes. The sadness blinds us, but hope is always right there with you. All you have to do is reach out for it. Whenever you're having a really bad day, wrap your arms around it and don't let go. And it doesn't hurt to also hold on to it on the not so bad days as well. Let hope guide you. Hope is the light in the darkness. Whatever you're feeling right now will pass. Things will get better, and then they'll get worse, and then they'll get better again. You know the drill. You've been on the exhausting grief ride for what feels like forever, but it's not forever. And as long as you have hope in your heart, everything is going to be okay, because hope is everything. Hope makes you look forward to the next day. Hope heals your heart. As the kids like to say, hope is dope.
I love that.
All right, tell us where we can find you.
You can find me at griefforguys.com. You can also find the book on Amazon, or my preference is on Audible, because I actually narrate the book, and I think it's the best experience because you can hear the emotion behind my words. And that's sort of it.
All right, and the book is A Space in the Heart, a survival guide for grieving parents. But as I said, it's a survival guide for everybody who's had a loss. And thank you
It's
so
very
much
true.
on the show today.
It's an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Larry. I know that Rob is your guiding light and will continue to be so. Thank you so much.
Thank you. He was right here with me.
Mhm.
And thanks everybody for joining us on the show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.